For tonight's class, we are going to talk about the default mode network, about being present, being mindful, and also we're going to talk about some mindfulness practices as well to help us be more present. So the default mode network was found somewhat by accident. In the last 30 years or so, we have learned more about the brain than we have ever known about it in history. And it was really through the invention of different machinery that was able to that would help us see what was happening in the brain real time. So it was the fMRI, the functional magnetic resonance imaging machine, that scientists would put people in, and they would ask them to do different tasks, to solve a problem, to solve this math problem, which word is missing, look at this scary picture, look at this happy picture, have a good memory, have a bad memory, try and memorize this set of numbers. And that when the participants were doing this, they could see what was, which part of the brain was becoming active. So they were starting to map out the brain and figure out, okay, this is what happens when they do this, and this part lights up when they do that. They thought that when they would tell the participants, okay, you can take your attention off the task, we're going to take a break for a few minutes, they thought that everyone's brain was going to go into a resting state, that it wouldn't be active anymore. But in fact, what happened was that several different regions, about 5 or 6, they're still not entirely sure, it's between 5 and 6, which regions in our brain, all lit up. Every time they were told, you no longer have to do the task, that automatically their brains would flip into this, that these different networks would become active. So they called it the default mode network, that when you're not engaged in a task, that automatically your brain flips into the default mode network. And what they also discovered is that this is the mind-wandering part of our brain. That when we are when this part of our brain is active, or these regions in our brain are active, our minds are wandering, and they are wandering in some very specific ways. So we spend a lot of time traveling, going out into the future, imagining the future, planning the future, going through different what-if scenarios. And then we spend a lot of time going back into the past, trying to remember something that, where we left something, trying to, going back through our day, thinking about what happened during the day, reflecting on the good parts, probably more time reflecting on the bad parts. And then when we're not going into the past or the future, we are kind of in the present, definitely air quotes around that, because we are narrating, just constantly commenting about every little thing that we are doing. And within all of these modes, we are also doing a lot of comparing and judging. And this is how everyone's default mode network works. And the common thread amongst all of these ways of thinking in the default mode is that it's all very self-referential. It's all about me. What's going to happen to me? What do they think about me? What do I think about them? How is what they're doing over there affecting me? It's all about me. It's not, what do all my neighbors think about Bob? What do all my neighbors think about me? It's not being concerned about Bob losing his job. It's what about if I lose my job? So it's all about me. Now, this had an evolutionary advantage for our ancestors, because you can imagine if they are sitting around the campfire and they are perfectly safe and they're doing something, they're making tools, they're making baskets, they're cooking food, they're doing things that they have done hundreds of times, thousands of times already. They can do this on autopilot. They don't need to think about it. So their minds are able to start traveling thinking about the future. Oh, don't forget, we better go get those berries. They should be ready to be picked next week. I want to get there before the bears, Or, oh, thinking back into the past, something that happened that day that, wow, that was really dangerous. Make sure that maybe we need to change the time we go down to the watering hole because those crocodiles have been there a few days in a row. We need to be really careful about that. Right? So thinking about things that are survival based while doing something else at the same time. And even while they're doing that, maybe a little like, oh, I tried to spear that fish today and it wasn't my blade wasn't so sharp, so I better make it a little bit sharper today. Narrating, commenting on what I'm doing. Or maybe I'm looking at the next person, shaping their knife part and thinking, oh, what they're doing is a little bit better. Yeah, maybe I should do it like that, right? Comparing. And then maybe we notice one of the young teenagers is making a little bit too much noise or venturing a little bit too close to the end of the camp line. And then you think, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. You're putting all of us at risk. You're bringing attention to all of us. Get back here. Judging. But in a way, because you're threatening the whole tribe. So being able to do one thing while thinking about how you can stay alive is definitely an advantage. I mean, that definitely helps, maximizes your time for you to reflect and think about what went wrong, to think about what you need to do to plan. Definitely an advantage. But in today's modern world, where we are all safe, most of our lives are on autopilot. Most of the things we can do, we don't have to think about. We don't walk out our front door and worry that a tiger is about to attack us. Instead, we walk out our front door, letting the perimeter monkey go, letting the mind wander. Go find a problem. Go out to the future, go out to the past, or just, let's just narrate, let's look around, let's start judging, let's start comparing. Go find a problem. That's what the perimeter monkey does. And he always finds a problem. So we can be driving down the freeway, 70 miles an hour. We get to our destination, we don't even remember how we got there. But we're already tense because we've already been festering on all these problems that we imagined happening or reliving the past. And now through this filter of, oh, maybe I did say the wrong thing there. Maybe that did sound kind of stupid. Maybe I did offend that person. I didn't realize it. Just stirring up these problems because we know what happens, as we talked about last week, right? These thoughts escalate really quickly. 80% of our thoughts are fear-based. We focus on what could go wrong, not what's going right, because that helped our ancestors survive. But for us in the modern world, we have to be really careful of this. Because every time a task ends, our minds automatically start wandering. They just automatically go there. And we're rehashing the same thoughts over and over again. They're not helping us survive. They're not benefiting anyone. I mean, just the opposite. They're terrorizing us for no perceived benefit, and everyone is having them. We all have a default mode network. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're a celebrity, a politician, if you're a billionaire. It doesn't matter. Everyone has this default mode network, and we're all thinking the same thoughts. They're not so original at all. We're just rehashing the same thoughts that everyone is having. And we know this because there was a study done by Dr. Matt Killingsworth at Harvard University several years back, where they had this app called trackyourhappiness.org. And you could sign up for the app, and you can still sign up for it today. The study part is over. And they had people from all over the world sign up for this app, and they would be pinged several times randomly throughout the day. And they were asked 3 questions. And the first question is, what are you doing? And there were about I think about 22 activities. I'm cleaning the house, I'm brushing my teeth, I'm working, I'm eating. So you could pick from about 22 different activities. And then the second question was, how engaged are you in what you're doing? And I think the answers, you could say, very, somewhat, not at all. And then the third question, how happy are you right now? And again, something like, very, somewhat, not at all. And what they found was that, first of all, our minds were wandering the most when we're brushing our teeth. That was the absolute peak mind wandering for us. House cleaning, dishes, but all the way down to 10% of the time, minds were wandering during sex. So at a time you would think that we would be fully engaged, and I'm not quite sure how that worked on the pinging in the middle of that. Like, excuse me, honey, I just got to answer how happy I am right now. But something that you would think our minds wouldn't be wandering. So what they found, though, was on average, our minds are wandering about 47% of the time. And that it doesn't matter how mundane the task is, how repetitive the task is, that if you were present, you were far happier than if your mind was wandering. And we know that having an overly active default mode network, they've done the studies, overly anxious people have overly active default mode networks. Depressed people, overly active default mode network. People with ADHD, right, having a hard time focusing, overly active DMN. PTSD is an overly active DMN where they're, just replaying the same trauma over and over. Schizophrenia, overly active DMN. I mean, those voices, start to take on personalities. So what started as something that was really good for humans, just like the stress response that we talked about last week was really good for us, just like the motivation reward pathway that we're going to talk about next week was really good at keeping our ancestors alive. In our modern world, all of these systems are backfiring on us. They are making us stressed, anxious, depressed. We have lost our ability to relax, to know how to just sit and be without plugging into something, without always needing something to get our attention, for fear of being alone with our thoughts. The studies are very clear, and you will see this in your own experience. You know this in your own experience. When your mind is wandering, you're less happy. When you're present, you're more happy. And according to the study, about half of the time, we are present. We're present when we are engaged in a task, when we are, we're looking out at a beautiful sunset, right? We have that moment before the commenting comes in. We've just finished a big project, and we have that moment of relaxation, right? Well, we'll sit and it's just done, and it's like, a few minutes before the mind starts coming back in again. So we're present in all of those situations, and we're happy in all of those situations. But we think that our happiness is because of the task that I was engaged in, that it was because of the sunset out there, that it was because of completing that project. And not saying that there's not a little bit of happiness in completing something, but the true conditions for our happiness were that we were present, that we were here. We weren't reaching out to add anything onto this moment. We weren't pushing anything away. We were using our senses, seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling. We were fully here and alive. There were no thoughts coloring our experience. But we're always looking to our outer conditions, believing that that's why I'm happy. When you're happy because you're present, And your presence, being present, is not dependent on those things. And I can prove this to you. If I were to ask you, would you be happier on a warm, sunny beach, or would you be happier on a crowded subway? Most of you would say, I'd be much happier on the warm, sunny beach. But once you get to the beach, you're on some tropical island, and it's exciting in the beginning, and there's some newness with the novelty. Once that wears off, if your mind wandered when you were at home, it's going to start wandering at the beach. And then the next thing it starts out kind of innocent. Oh, I'm so happy to be here. This is so great, right? We're just kind of talking it through in our heads. This feels so good. Oh God, it was such a nightmare getting here though. I mean, those last few things I had to do, and my boss was micromanaging me, and that, my colleague, I can't stand them. God, I wish we could get rid of him. And here we are on our nice, warm, sunny beach, complaining in our minds, already believing we're back in the troubles that we were just saying a minute ago. I'm so happy I'm not there. But now you're not so happy. Or you're complaining in your mind, those kids are being too loud over there. What kind of parents let their kids run loose like that, right? The judging, or, oh, look at them. Gosh, she's very attractive. Look at her. Everything seems to be in place. Comparing immediately. Oh my God, doesn't quite look the same here. So there we are on that warm, sunny beach, mind wandering. The perimeter monkey's left the building. He's found the problems. He's come back. He's showing them to us. But if you're on that subway and you're present, you're not commenting on what you're seeing, you're just seeing. You're not labeling any thoughts about what someone's saying or music or anything you're hearing. You're just hearing. You're feeling your body sitting on the chair, feeling your back pressed against it. You're totally present. You're not pushing anything away. You're not wishing to get to the next stop, wishing for this to be over. You're totally present. You're totally at ease. You are much more relaxed. You are happier on the subway being present than you are on the warm sandy beach being lost in your thoughts. Wherever you go, your mind's going with you. And if your habit is to mind wander, then you're going to continue mind wandering wherever it is that you go. So mindfulness is the practice that helps us shine a light on our experience, to really help us see what is going on in here. So when we're driving to the store and we feel that tension, remember we talked about that last week, you won't notice the thoughts so much. They're too quick. But you'll notice that tension, that something just doesn't feel quite right. All of a sudden, something doesn't feel quite right. I mean, no one's got a gun to my head. What is it? Right? Oh, my mind's already at the store. That's the problem. I got to bring my mind back to where I am right now. Right? And this is what mindfulness is doing, is showing us, where is your mind going? As we're eating our soup and we notice that we're comparing. It doesn't taste as good as it did last time. What did they have? Why didn't I order what they have? This doesn't taste so good anymore. Or thinking about, what should I order for dessert as I'm eating my soup, right? Not really fully there, present with tasting the soup, because it's always as though we're not experiencing the world directly with our five senses, right? With sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. There's this filter in between, thinking, comparing, judging, expecting. Oh, I thought it was going to be this way. It's not quite as good as I thought it was going to be. I thought they were going to do this. So never really being able to be there in the moment, accepting what's happening, going with the flow of what's happening, finding the joy in all those little moments of surprise, of wonder, of being present, the joy of all the little mundane moments that are happening in every one of our lives, but that we're not experiencing because we're not there, because our mind is already on to the next thing, because we're too busy narrating our experience. We're not even seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling what's going on. And it really does. I mean, our thoughts shape our reality. We don't experience the world directly anymore. So mindfulness is bringing more awareness to what's happening, bringing more light to what's happening in our experience, and really doing this in a non-judgmental way. Like I said last week about, when your mind wanders and you bring it back in meditation, always to bring kindness. Don't use the stick. We've tried the stick. The stick doesn't work. Throw away the stick. It's not helping. So to really be as kind and caring and as gentle as we can be, so that we're willing to look at it. Don't judge yourself for judging, right? That's not helpful. To be able to look at it and go, this is what's happening. It's the default mode network. Everyone's doing it. They're not your thoughts even. They're not original. So be willing to just look at what's happening in your experience non-judgmentally, in a kind way, so that you're not so afraid to look at it because I might beat myself up, right? But I can look at it to see what's happening, to go, wow, I really wasn't there. I'm not here right now. I'm lost in thoughts about what's going to happen tomorrow. And I don't really know what's going to happen tomorrow. I mean, we all have a plan, but none of us really knows, right? We definitely don't know how we're going to feel about things tomorrow. Our task is to try and be more mindful, to try and bring more awareness to our experience. And so I want to give you some mindfulness practices so you know what to do when you recognize, I'm not here. My thought, I recognize it's happening, but I don't know how to come back to the present moment. I don't know what to do. And the first practice is a really simple practice of just consciously breathing throughout the day. Just taking more breaths, through our nose. Just taking some breaths. You're in a meeting, you're sitting in a class like this, this is tiring for us, right? So just taking some conscious breaths. When you're in your car, take some conscious breaths. When you're doing the dishes, take some conscious breaths. When you're walking somewhere, take some conscious breaths. Because when you breathe consciously, I mean, we're always breathing, right? But when you breathe consciously, you're starting to directly experience one of your senses. You're feeling again. And then as you feel your breath, start to bring in the other senses. Start to see where you are. Use hearing to hear the sounds in your environment. If you're eating, taste what it is that you're eating. Smelling and feeling, of course, with the breath, but also feeling if you're walking, feeling where your body, feeling the physical sensations in your body, grounding yourself back into the present moment. So the more that we can remember to just consciously breathe throughout the day, I mean, that just helps. The mind starts to wander. Just breathe, come back into what you're doing. If you're doing the dishes, if you're cleaning, and being extra on alert when you're on autopilot. So for so many of the things that we can do today that we can do on autopilot, to bring more breathing into it, to come into what it is that you're doing. If you're vacuuming, to really look at what you're vacuuming now. Don't start thinking about, I got to get to the next thing. I got to get this finished so I can get to the next thing, right? Because that's what we're always thinking, right? Because cleaning and all these mundane activities aren't really a part of life, right? We got to race through those. They're so painful. No, that's optional. We're adding that on. These things are a part of life that take up a couple hours every day. Cooking, cleaning, just showering, shaving. This all takes, we take a few hours each day to do these kind of what we consider mundane activities. And yet they don't have to be something to be rushed through, because when you're present and you're vacuuming and you're feeling the vacuum going back and forth and you're there with it and you say, oh, there's a little spot over there, and you get it. There's an ease to it. There's a flow to it. There's a sense of just, this feels nice. I'm enjoying vacuuming. I don't have to race to get to the next thing. I'm okay right here, right now, doing what I'm doing. Just being more aware of your breath. And another reason why having just more conscious breathing throughout the day is that our breathing, the way we breathe most of the time, because we breathe a lot through our mouths. I'm breathing through my mouth because I'm talking. That's what it's really for, when we're talking, to breathe through our mouth. But when we are not, we should be breathing through our nose. And when we breathe through our nose, we tend to take a little bit fuller of a breath. It's also things like nitric oxide gets released, and that opens up the capillaries so that we get better exchange of oxygen into our bloodstream. So it gets to go throughout our brain and our organs and tissues. But in addition, so it's a calming breath. It really centers us and it relaxes us. But how we are mostly breathing with our mouth open is a very shallow breath. And the upper part of our lungs has a lot of receptors for the sympathetic nervous system, for the stress response. Just the way we are breathing often sends the perimeter monkey out, because our brain's like, man, you're breathing short, shallow breaths with your mouth open. And, so it's like, man, there's probably a problem. Let's go look. Let's go jump out to the future. Let's think about what we were doing the last few hours. Let's try and find a problem, because look at how you're breathing. So by breathing more consciously through our nose, slower breaths, and using that as the impetus to really bring us into all of our senses, sight, sound, touch, taste, smell, to really ground us back in, to not have that filter of thought always overlaying our experience. And then the next 3 practices that I want to give you, you can do them on their own, or you can even do a combination of them. And these are more, you've gone a little too far down the rabbit hole. You're stressed. Right now you're freaking out over something. You're upset, you're disappointed, you're angry. Breathing and just coming back, you're like, no, that's just not going to cut it. Like, I'm just too worked up about this. The first practice, when we're really feeling threatened, we're feeling like something's really bad happening in our lives. In that way, when we recognize that, to take 10 deep breaths. Most of you know these practices, but 10 deep breaths where you're really opening up and welcoming the energy that is already there. All that tightening, all of that throbbing, all of that pulsating energy that's in your chest, in your abdomen. We try distracting ourselves, numbing ourselves, suppressing it. Doesn't work. So open up to it, welcome it. It's already here. Do the exact opposite. This is accepting it. You're here. It's just energy. It's just energy. It's uncomfortable energy. Welcome it. Breathe into it. 10 deep breaths. And this is hard to do, but 10 deep breaths to really open up to that energy, creating space. Because again, normally we tighten up with it, making it worse, right? Kind of like a pressure cooker. Now we're doing the opposite. I'm going to give you space to exist because you are here already, my friend. I might as well give you some space to exist. We breathe into it. And on each exhale, if any of that energy is ready to go, okay, great. That's what an exhale is. It's a letting go. It's a surrender. Not making you go. And then you inhale, again, create space, and then exhale. And as you're doing this, of course, what you are doing by doing the deep breathing, engaging the parasympathetic nervous response, bringing on the rest and relax response, the rest and digest response. And you are also not telling yourself the story any longer that caused you to get into this predicament in the first place, because now your attention is off the story and your attention is on the breathing and the creating space. We do this for 10 breaths. Each breath, you'll notice, you'll feel it. The energy, you give it space and you kind of notice it's getting a little less intense. It's moving around a little bit. It's still, by the end of 10 breaths, depending upon how stressed out you were to begin with, probably still a little bit uncomfortable. I would say still a little bit of discomfort there, but it's enough that you can come back into the present moment and go like, wow, like I was freaking out about having to go do that thing later, just something I don't want to go do. Like, I don't want to go to that dinner party, right? Introverts, we know this. So, we can freak out about something like that, or just, oh, I was freaking out about, God, I thought they thought I offended them. And my God, that story just spiraled out of control in my head. Oh, it was so consuming. I thought I was going to be kicked out of the tribe, right? That's all our thoughts related to what do other people think about me? What if I get kicked out of the tribe? Because it would have meant certain death. By doing the deep breathing, it brings us back into the present moment enough where we can be like, wow, I was really believing all those thoughts and I'm back now. And I can look around and I can hear and I can ground myself back in the present moment and pull myself out of it. And that might be enough. You might just have to do the 10 breaths and be good. If it's still sticky, if it's still a little sticky, the thought, then continue on. And most of you know about the mindfulness bracelets. Anyone that wants a mindfulness bracelet, just email me. And there's usually someone going up to the States once a month, and I can send them with them. We actually have a total of 4 mindfulness bracelets. But there's some instructions on here, because when we get really stressed, like you won't remember, one of the problems with the 10 breaths is you're probably not going to remember to do it. That is the problem with a lot of these practices, is we don't remember to do them. Just wearing the mindfulness bracelet is in a way reminding you to do it. That, oh, you've got tools, you've got things that you can do. And this practice is more of an investigative practice to really explore the thoughts a little more clearly. But we do still need to do some things in the beginning. The first instruction on the bracelet is label. I'm very limited in the number of letters I can have, so I just have to label. And what I mean there is label what it is that's going on. Identify what the problem is. Is there a tiger in front of you? No. What are you thinking about? Oh, I'm thinking about how that person insulted me 5 years ago. I'm thinking about how I finally have the perfect comeback and why I'm finally going to get that person to believe that what I'm saying is right, right? So to start identifying, like, this is the thought. And it's really helpful if you can say it, like you identify it and you go, okay, label. This is the thought that person insulted me. Okay, all right, that's what's going on. We're finally starting to get to the root of the problem, because it's not what happened. It's not that they insulted you. It's not that person doesn't like you. It's not that we screwed up and said the wrong thing. Because if we're not thinking about any of those things, it's not a problem. It's only a problem because we're thinking about it. So this is the thought that person insulted me. That person criticized me. As soon as we do that, it creates a little bit of space, a little bit of separation between us and the thought. We're a little more objective. And it starts to bring our prefrontal cortex back online. That we talked about last week, how when we get stressed, we lose our prefrontal cortex. Part of our brain for rational thinking, complex problem solving, managing our emotions, reasoning, weighing up the consequences of our behavior. Willpower, which is why willpower is a terrible, terrible thing to use to try and make change. By the end of the day, you'll have used up all your willpower, and if you're on a diet, forget it. You're going for the Reese's or whatever it is. So you lose all of those things when you're stressed. And you start to get your prefrontal cortex back online just by labeling it in that way. The second step is feelings. And by this, I mean coming into our body and feeling. Breathing, right? Breathing and feeling always together. So feeling and breathing what's going on and really describing, again, those sensations. What's going on here? Is there a pressure? Is it intense? Is it throbbing? Is it tingling? Is it round shape? Is it oblong? Is it moving around? Like really trying to describe what's happening as you're breathing into it and really describe the feelings that you're having. Because again, your mind is now off the thoughts that were creating all the feelings. The breathing is starting to relax you a little bit more. But I also want you to associate the thought created those uncomfortable feelings. Not that that person disagrees with you, not that they have different political views, not that that person criticized you. It's the thought that's causing you to feel this way. And we've got to start getting to the source of the problem. It's not what everyone else is doing. We can't prevent the world from criticizing us, from having different views and opinions, from people disappointing us. We're never going to stop that. But we've got to be able to practice. We've got to be able to let go of the thoughts. What happened an hour ago, a day ago, 10 days ago, 10 years ago. Time to let it go. So feelings, describing, we're the ones that are creating this discomfort. The third point on here, and this is really the investigation part. Is it useful? And this is for you to really look and go, is this thought useful? Like, is it helping anything? Is there anything to do? And I really mean, don't just go, well, of course it's not useful. Sometimes the answer is, yes, this is useful. There's something my neighbor is doing there and it keeps bugging me. And maybe you do want to go and have a talk with them about it. You know, maybe there is something going on. You want to go talk to your boss about it. You're having a disagreement with a friend. You want to go talk to them about it. Sometimes there's something to do here. Most of the time there's not. Sometimes there is. And then the fourth step again is breathing. Just come back into the breath before you go and do something. If you need to go and talk to someone, great. You have really grounded yourself back into the present moment. You're no longer feeling as threatened. You're feeling more calm and relaxed. You're back in the present moment. So you can go have a constructive conversation, right? Maybe you don't get what you want, but at least you didn't come to blows or something. So I mean, that's a win in itself. And then, so mindfulness bracelets. On the inside of the bracelet, and 3 of the 4 bracelets all have something to do with kindness. And it says on the inside here, be kind to yourself. And we're going to talk about that with a story. Some of you know the Monica story to lead us into the next practice, the last practice. There was a young mother going into the supermarket with her 3-year-old daughter in the shopping cart. And this older woman just happened to be behind them as they entered the supermarket. And this woman happened to be behind them through the whole market. And when they get to the cookie aisle, the little girl starts asking for some cookies. And when the mother tells her she can't have any cookies, she immediately starts whining and fussing. And the mother just says calmly and so softly, so gently, oh, there, Monica, don't be upset now. We're nearly halfway through the supermarket. The older woman looks at this like, wow, very impressed. And then they get to the candy aisle. The little girl's begging for some candy. The mother tells her she can't have any candy. She immediately starts crying and whining and fussing. And so gently, so kindly and calmly, the mother just says, there, Monica, don't cry now. Only 2 more lanes and we'll be at the checkout, 2 more aisles and we'll be at the checkout lane. And the older woman's watching this like, wow, very impressive. You get to the checkout lane and the little girl starts clamoring, reaching out for some gum. And upon hearing there will be no gum purchase, she goes into her worst tantrum yet. She is screaming at the top of her lungs. And the mother just says so gently, so quietly and softly, there, Monica, don't be upset now. We're nearly through this checkout lane. And then we can go home and take a nice nap. The older woman is just like, wow, this woman's got her mothering skills down. So she follows her out into the parking lot to compliment the mother on how patient she was with little Monica. And the mother replies, I'm Monica. My little girl's name is Tammy. So how we talk to ourselves can either escalate a situation or de-escalate a situation. That when we talk to ourselves kindly, we take that stressful type of thinking that has like 700 to 1,000 words per minute, right? And we automatically drop it down to 300 words per minute and less. Like it just slices through and opens up the space for us to be more present naturally. The thoughts that want to push us over the edge, that say, I can't take this anymore, I'm never taking you to the supermarket again. The tantrum that we end up having that push us over. Instead, we're using thoughts to bring us back. Just a little bit more to go. And then we can go home and take a nice nap. So, the way we talk to ourselves makes a massive difference in whether we push ourselves to the edge or we bring ourselves back. And talking kindly to ourselves. My favorite practice. So, this is my absolute favorite. And the science shows it's most effective if we talk to ourselves in the second or third person. And then also, if you can add on like an endearing, like, oh, sweetheart, honey, I find that super helpful. And my favorite saying, and I got this from Sylvia Boorstein, was, oh, sweetheart, this is really tough, isn't it? And that has pulled me back from the ledge so many times, because you're on hold with customer service. This shouldn't be happening, for 2 hours, or something happened. For us kiters, you're out there, your kite drops, and you're like, this shouldn't be happening. The dogs are going crazy. This shouldn't be happening. It's like, it is happening. And when you say to yourself, like, oh, sweetheart, this is really tough, isn't it? I just find it's like I'm acknowledging, yeah, this is tough. It sucks, but it's okay. Like, it kind of just gives some levity to the situation. Like, it sucks, yeah, but come on, let's get a grip here. You're just on hold, or the dogs are just barking. Like, it's nothing, it's not life-threatening. Talking to ourselves kindly just brings us right back and reminds us, this is a temporary situation. It's not going to last. I just need to get through these next few minutes. And then I can go home and take a nice nap. I love that little line. So always, always, always kind. That's one of the bracelets, actually. Always, always, always be kind. Pay attention, be kind, begin again. And then the fourth one, I'm not going to tell you the words because we're going to use that in the story for the fourth class. I do want to just give a little bit of balance. It's not that mind wandering can still be helpful for us. Because, of course, sometimes we need to get out of our everyday mode of thinking for a problem. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, man, where'd that solution come from? It just came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, you're like, wow, that was amazing, right? So it's really nice for us to be able to be more present most of the time, but to give ourselves a little bit of room sometimes. To say, like, I am going to go for a walk and I am going to let my mind wander. I'm going to pause maybe every 5 minutes and just ground myself back again, just to make sure, the perimeter monkey doesn't get too far away from me. But, every now and then it is kind of nice just to let the mind wander, and something pops up and something we do remember, like, oh, yeah, I do need to do that. Don't forget, right? The problem is that we're doing it so much of the time. And remember, it's creating anxiety, depression, ADHD. PTSD, schizophrenia, right? So, too much mind wandering, not good. And it doesn't make us happy. So we also want to be clear about that if our minds are wandering too much of the time. And the reality is they're just not solving anything. There was a study done at, I think it was the University of Cincinnati, where they found that 85% of our worries never come true. And of the 15% that do come true, we handle it far better than we think we would have handled it. Our thoughts aren't really adding to our problem solving. They are the problems. They are the problems. And so this is for you to see for yourself, like everything we do each week. Go explore this for yourself. See if this works. See if you're more relaxed. See if you're happier. See if your mind's clearer, if the quality of your thoughts becomes better. right? When we reduce the quantity of our thoughts. See this for yourself, if it's true or not. And if it is, keep bringing yourself back into the present moment. And we spend so much time worrying for no benefit whatsoever.